So thanks, Venkat, and thanks to the Microsoft team for hosting me here, along with Shubhangi, of course. Today we are here not in our professional capacity, right? I'm actually the CTO at Quicksilver. Shubhangi is a pathologist, but today here we are not in that professional capacity. We are here to talk about road safety, and that is actually one of the key initiatives of our foundation, the Arundhati Foundation. And I want you to picture this, right, to give you a sense of what happens here. So we have this kind of a situation on our roads, right? Very, very crowded. Lots of different kinds of people you see there. Kids, young couples, elderly people, tradesmen, office-going people, all sorts of people. And then every hour, you start seeing this situation. About 17 people we lose on our roads every hour. Okay. And if you see the statistics, this is nothing that we can be proud of. We are the #1 country as far as accidents and serious injuries go. You can see the decline during COVID times, but even then, you can see that this number is very, very high. During COVID, people were indoors. There were so many curbs. You can see that the accidents reduced, but the number is very, very high. And this particular goal of reducing accidents by 50%, the initial goal was 2020. Now it is 2030. Okay. Of course, there's now a little more focus. There are some real concrete measures being taken, but still a long way to go to bring that down by 50%. And this would not be a surprise to most of you, right? Who are the people who are the most vulnerable on our roads? It's the two-wheeler drivers, right? It's simple physics there, right? Because one, there's a challenge with the balance. You have to have the vehicle in motion to a degree to be able to balance properly, and a small nudge can actually throw you off balance pretty easily. But the other factor is that it's not protected, right? It's open. And there's so many two-wheelers on our roads. So that's actually the biggest contributor. And unfortunately, not enough focus on training two-wheelers. Most of the people, pick up their bike soon after they pick up their cycles, right? They know cycling, they think they can get onto the bike and they can actually move forward. And most of us, have certainly done that. I have done that. But there is a science to what driving means and how do you actually go about it. So this is one of the biggest contributors that we have. And if you see the other statistics, the national and state highways accounted for more than 60%. So in fact, one of the focus areas to bring down our overall fatality rate is to focus on the highways, right? But the cities are not getting as much attention in terms of where we could actually improve in terms of road safety. This is an interesting statistic because it's changed. The government, for the first time, I've been tracking the statistics for about 7 years now. And what I have noticed is that in the past, there was a tendency to put a lot of things on the driver. It is actually certainly, even now, you can see that overspeeding is by far the largest contributor. But now you see two new factors that have come in here. One is road condition. They say slash vehicle, but primarily road condition there. Right? It is actually being logged, at least at this particular time, and tracked to a degree. The second one that has come up on this list is distracted driving. Wasn't there earlier, right? It would be sort of subsumed under rash driving, which would include jumping lights or, not following lane discipline and all other kinds of things. But now distracted driving is one category in itself. So this is some interesting changes that are happening as the ministry does recognize the core contributors have to be acknowledged and then addressed, right? Yeah.
So how reliable are these statistics? The reason I ask is that we have looked at,
Sure.
as part of the HAMS project, we looked at data for various states in the country.
Yeah.
For example, UP,
Yeah.
which has by far the largest population, had fewer accidents and fewer fatalities reported than certain much smaller states.
Sure. Yeah.
So
You have a very, very good point there. And it is acknowledged that this is probably at least as far as injuries which are not leading to death are concerned. I mean, there may be accidents which are happening, but not leading to fatalities. That percentage will be much higher. It may be like even double of whatever you see here. But in terms of the fatalities, NIMHANS actually had done some kind of a study. And NIMHANS study says that for the city, it's about 30 to 40% report. Sorry, the number reported is 30 to 40% less than what it actually is.
A question?
Yeah.
So in the previous slide, right, you had stats for deaths by vehicle type, right? So I was wondering, do you have statistics on the collision with the two-wheelers, right? Is it two-wheelers colliding with trucks or buses or cars? Like pairwise, do you have data? Is it, because one suspicion I have is these are large vehicles, buses and trucks, which are hitting two-wheelers and pedestrians, and that's sort of majority, or is that not true?
Yeah, actually, that does contribute to the major part. I don't have stats to respond to you, but certainly the sort of anecdotal evidence or what you read does point to exactly what you say.
Right, and there I think, like at least in different states, right, there are unions and all kinds of things where these problems are sort of not easily tractable, right? The bus drivers are not really accountable. So you have all kinds of other issues which make it very complex. That's the impression I had.
Yeah, so there are definitely challenges in terms of getting exact data, but I think the general problem is sort of still understood, right? And we probably can still address what needs to be done in that regard. But you're right. I mean, there are lots of. If you look at the way data is gathered, there is no standardization. There is really no way to know that everything is accounted for, whether it is the two drivers involved, or maybe it is one driver involved, the condition of the driver, the condition of the vehicle, the condition of the road, the condition around, meaning the weather conditions and such. There's so many factors, but when the log is actually entered, I think there are lots of shortcuts taken, and we may not even have a standard way to aggregate all of that. So there are lots of challenges there. But I think we'll just move forward to some of the key
Thank you.
I want to convey. So I wanted to share with you a small video and set the stage for the next set of slides.
So last year, 249 people died on our roads. What do you think would be a more acceptable number?
Acceptable? 70 maybe? Probably 70.
Can you send 70? Actually, this is what 70 people looks like.
It's a family.
So now, what do you think would be a more acceptable number?
0. 0.
That was from Australia. And Australia has been very, very focused on reducing fatalities. So they're talking about reducing from 285 in that province of Victoria, down to 0. But the question over there, actually, right? You see how it starts when statistically reducing from 285 to 75 looks really something. Maybe even we are trying to reduce 50%. But who would you be okay with to be included in those 75? And when it gets personal, there's only one right answer: 0. So we do need safer roads, right? I mean, engineering is actually very, very key to this in terms of building really safe roads. Safer vehicles, the HAMS project that I first discovered was really a very, very good way to take it further into the safer people, right? Because it's about safer driving, but using technology to do that. But first of all, it's really about the mindset is what I think. Because yes, the roads have to be forgiving, the vehicles have to be forgiving, but the people have to be really conscious about what happens on the roads. And therefore, we talk about defensive driving. Now, when you think about defensive, it has a sort of a negative connotation, right? We do like people who go on the offensive. You don't see an IPL match where people who are defending will really get any awards. But this is not really about being defensive in the negative sense. This is really about being proactive in the way you look at the road, the way you absorb the conditions on the road, the way you are able to react or predict what is going to happen and then deal with it. And so this is actually something that takes you beyond cynicism, right? When you think about it in the sense that ye chalta hai, this will happen, nothing more that I can do about it, you look at it very differently. But if you are actually out there and you enjoy your driving particularly, then you want to actually be able to do it every day in a manner that will actually keep you, not you only, but everybody around you safe. And so the first tenet of this is to protect yourself first, right? So coming back to a cricket analogy, so Farooq Engineer, many of the young people may not even have heard this name, but the oldies in the room may actually know about him. So Farooq Engineer was our cricketer, wicketkeeper, batsman, and he joked once. He joked that batsmen started wearing abdomen guards around 1868 or so. They started wearing helmets in 1978, thereabouts. And engineer joked it took us 100 years to realize that the upper story needs to be protected. But this is actually very key because when you're on two-wheelers, and we saw the statistics, the drop from the top, right, with the vertical drop is sufficient. It doesn't matter what your horizontal speed is. It's physics. And you can see that. You can do a drop test and see that. The vertical drop is sufficient to injure the head. And you don't really want any skull, brain, spine injuries. So always, always wear a helmet. The helmet will take the blow and protect you. And the same goes in the car for seat belts, whether you're in the front seat or in the rear seat. Even in the rear seat, that's what this slide is showing. There's a catapulting effect. You just throw you. I've excluded the videos for keeping the time. But if you have the interest or you want to go and check out, just look at videos that relate to the seat belt in the rear seat, and you'll see how much you can actually catapult in the event of a sudden stop. So the thing is about protecting yourself first, right? And I keep insisting on this because it's like what you hear on the airplanes, right? You first wear your mask, then you help your fellow passenger, right? You can't be a good citizen. You can't be a good husband. You can't be a good son. You can't be a good daughter without first protecting yourself. And so that's actually important. No matter whether you drive in a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler, protect yourself first. This is the other thing about recognizing that the road is a shared space. Right? So there's a kind of a responsibility that we take. One of my colleagues actually was talking about it to say that there are rules for the road. And many times the rules are broken knowingly. Many times the rules are broken without necessarily, recognizing that we are actually breaking those rules. But the thing is really about even having that little bit of a personal touch. When you're riding in your bike or when you're driving your car, if you see somebody crossing, would you accelerate to, go before that person? If somebody is going a little slow before you, would you be honking and saying, get out of my way? Now, what if the other person who was involved in this was your family? What if it was your friend? Would you do the same thing? And if you would not, why does that behavior change? I'm sure you would. And you can think about why the behavior changes. So the moment you make it personal, the moment you recognize that the other person has an equal access and right to the road, you would actually adjust your behavior and you would be far more calm. There's a joke, right? It's a pun actually that goes, where do you see the most road rage? Right? Or why do you see the most road rage? Because the roads are cross. Right? It's crossroads, angry roads. But why are the roads cross? I mean, that's actually the place where it happens. But it happens because as humans, we tend to actually think that we should have the right before the other person. Right? And just that little bit of deference to be able to say that we are sharing this will actually go a long way in controlling your anger, in making it a better ride for yourself. But another important factor, and the gentleman was talking about the accidents that happen when two-wheelers and bigger vehicles come in contact. Now, in a lot of material that you will see, and even in the training that people go through, particularly car driving, they talk about blind spots and they teach you about blind spots, right? If you haven't learned about it, please at least go through that and learn about blind spots. But a lot of that is about my blind spots when I'm driving, right? I need to be equally cognizant about the blind spots of others. And that is actually one of the most important things that comes into play when two-wheelers and large vehicles interact.
This is my first experience as a bus driver.
Could there be any difference between driving a bus and driving any other vehicle?
No, I believe.
Okay. As a bus driver, will you have to face any challenges?
I don't think so.
So, are you ready to drive?
Yes.
Yes, I'm ready.
Now look into your mirrors and examine if there's anyone.
No, I can't see anybody.
Do you see anyone on the left side of the bus?
No.
Shall we just get down from the bus and just have a look?
Yeah, sure.
Oh my God, I could never see them. They were here the whole time.
I am very confident there was no one here.
So not just the buses, right? These blind spots are for every single vehicle. It's also caused by man-made objects. It's caused by natural objects. But you have to recognize that just because you are in the open and two-wheelers are in the open doesn't mean that you're seen. And that actually should be one of the key factors that anybody on the road should be aware of. Even if you're in a four-wheeler, be extra cautious when you see two-wheelers around you, right? Because they may not be able to understand where your blind spots are. Speed. So this is actually the single most important factor in fatalities, because it is the kinetic energy that is actually getting absorbed, and obviously it is in that process causing the damage. It is actually compounded, right? Any small thing that actually happens gets compounded or amplified because of the speed. So imagine a bad road, or imagine distracted driving, or imagine that there is a drunk driver. Imagine it's wet weather. You add the element of speed, and you can see that it actually amplifies what could be a small error becomes actually much more harder to control. And in that, the only safe approach is to say that you are driving well within your control, right? If it's wet, reduce your speed. In case you see the road is bad, reduce your speed. Be in control, right? It's not about getting fast over there. The speed limit is not really a target. You don't want to actually say, I have to hit that limit. You have to be in control. That is the most important. There are all other kinds of physics that comes into play because your cone of visibility reduces. You just don't see what is near you. You will see some things which are far and in the middle, not in the periphery.
With speed, isn't there a subtle issue, which is you have to keep pace with the others. If others are going faster than the speed limit, or if you don't keep pace, you might actually make things less safe for yourself and others, because the relative motion between the vehicles is what will cause things to happen.
So while it is true that you would want to keep pace with the others, but again, you don't necessarily have to cross speed limits to keep pace. That means actually whoever is driving is actually broken. But otherwise, if you're saying on a highway, there are others going at 60 and you would go at 60, yeah, I mean, that's fine. Because primarily those roads are designed or meant to be driven at that rate, right? But what happens is to recognize also that you need a 2-second distance, right? 2 to 3 seconds. In fact, if typically people say 2 seconds, but the moment you cross something like 80 kilometers per hour, 3 seconds is better, because you will take 1 second to just react and hit your brake. And it'll take you 2 seconds more to stop, right? So if you are traveling at a speed which you cannot stop in sufficient time before the other car in front of you, then you are going too fast. So there are parameters, you're right. I mean, you can gauge on the basis of how others are traveling, but you can gauge that and plan it. Did you have a question? No. This one, I don't put it here to advocate drinking and not drinking or anything like that. Adults make their decisions. My only request on this particular slide is that make the decision before you take the sip. Okay, alcohol is a very, very funny ingredient, because once you imbibe it, you will be the most confident person on earth. So don't make that decision after you take the drink. Take that decision before you take the drink and stick to it. And we have so many options these days. So never do this. This has reduced, by the way. What has increased is distracted driving. Okay. And this has increased because it is just ubiquitous, right? There are 3 main distractions. Right? When you're driving, we say the golden rule is to have hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, but there's a third organ at play. That's your mind. And that should be also focused on the road. Right? The cell phone is one that will actually take you off on all 3. Okay, potentially hands-free keeps your hands on the wheel, right? Of course, you may still go off and tap it and say, receive the call and so on. But remember, the most important organ in this whole thing is the mind. You guys are doing all kinds of image processing, making decisions on the basis of those things. That's exactly what is happening over there, right? Sound, image. And it's not that simple to multitask. We are going to do that quick exercise. But before I do that, I just wanted to also caution you that even while walking, do not be distracted. Or if you are calling someone, right? Nowadays, it's not very easy to recognize where that person might be because most often these days we call on the cell phone, right? So if I call you, I don't know where you are and you pick up the phone, I may continue to talk as I would normally do, but if you're driving, then that's not the right thing, right? The onus would be on the driver to say, I will not take that call, right? Because the person who's calling is not aware of how it is. I want to do a small exercise. And for that, I wanted to bring a volunteer up here. You want to check this focus, or do we bring it in front? Somebody volunteer? I think it's quite visible there. That's okay. The intent is not to be very accurate with that. Doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's not the intent. Any volunteer? Come. There's not really any rocket science here. Come. Oh, all right. Nice. Yeah. Okay. So we are going to just do one very simple thing. And what I want you guys to note, okay, is that, and you can narrate for yourself also, right? But just observe what he goes through as he does it, right? What we are going to do is on the first line over here, okay, just put in big letters, okay? Just say Microsoft Vigyan. It will not fit. Okay, let's stop at that. Okay, Microsoft. Okay. Below this, you write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as many as you have here. Yeah, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so in this particular exercise, right? First line written by itself, second line written by itself. Maybe because of what I asked him, it took him a little time, but let's do the same thing again, okay? Just write it very quickly. Microsoft on the first. Yeah. All right. So relatively smooth, right? Whatever he was doing. Now I want to do an exercise where you write M1, I2, C3. Just go on. Yeah. No, below. Huh. All right. So what was your own feeling when you did that? You want a mic? I mean, just as an experience, right? Writing this fairly straightforward, right? What happened when you did this?
I lost continuity for each context switch I had to.
So there was some difficulty in context switch. There was an error over here, right? You can also see, of course here also it is actually reduced, but you can see progressively that it actually sort of dipped, right? So this is actually a very simple exercise that tells you It is not so simple to multitask. And this is what we will do if we do distracted driving. This is very simple. If I were to ask him to write a phrase over here which he doesn't know, if I ask him to even do this as a 2 stable, okay, forget about a 13 stable or a 17 stable, right? This will be very, very difficult. And if this is a familiar territory, you will still have, it may be muscle memory. But the moment you actually have to react to different situations, it's not that simple. And so thanks so much for volunteering. But this was actually a simple exercise to demonstrate. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand distracted driving, right? But if you think about roads today, there are Ola, Uber drivers who are predominantly meant to use smartphones to get their bookings, to look at GPS navigation.
Yeah.
What do you suggest for them? While yes, of course, you would want to avoid smartphones, but they're bread and butter for them. And I know some of the driving schools teach them how to use that in a proactive way, right? Like stop and take the bookings. But still, even we use navigation, and we are constantly on phones to look at directions, right?
Yeah, you're right. I do understand that. And that's easier actually for a 4-wheeler rider than it is for a 2-wheeler rider. Okay. See, some of these things, we've become sort of, you could say even the technology has become so ubiquitous that it actually makes us use it. In the past, we might not have actually used it. I'm not absolving us, right, in that sense. But in the past, we didn't have that. We would just go around and ask, where's the next turn that I need to take? But here's the thing, right? Even more important for the Uber or the Ola driver, because 1, it's his livelihood. 2, he's carrying passengers, right? So what are the alternatives that they have? The one alternative is to actually understand some of the key elements or landmarks on the road so that you have a mental map of where you want to go. Some details you may still not have all the clarity, but you can take some occasions, maybe it's a traffic light, maybe it is some place where you have some stop where you can actually double check. You could also turn on the sound and the prompts that actually are possible, right? Where the navigation tells you turn right, it's coming in 50 meters or whatever. Not all is accurate. You may not fully understand when it says turn left, what exactly, how far away it is. Maybe there are 2-3 turns there. And then there is also the challenge of the 2-wheeler guys. There's the Swiggies and the Dunzos and all these other guys who are also in a similar situation. Now, there are some technologies actually that are getting developed so that they get the feed in their helmets as opposed to having to see. So they get the prompts, through a speaker in their helmets. But in my mind, all of these things are actually kind of because of the pressure we put on them to say that you have to deliver within 30 minutes. Now, if it becomes 32 minutes, I don't think it's really going to cause that big a problem. My take would be that if you have to refer to something like this, just pause and take a look.
My point was mainly to train these people, right, in a way such that they're cautious about the technologies.
Yes. So
being aware of, okay, you could use earphones, you could do other things, right? Yeah. Such kind of training is very minimal today.
Yeah, they certainly have to be trained in that manner. I agree with you there. Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm through because you said. Yeah, we can take questions. We can ask.
So I have probably a very silly but kind of related question. So do you think voice distracts less or does not distract at all? Because, listening to the prompts and listening to what's happening on the GPS, etc., is like now fairly common. Does that have, how does that affect the driving thing? The other related thing to that is that when, you travel intercity, when I travel on the hills, all the cabbies blare music. And if you want to kind of ask them to turn it off or turn it down, they say that even bus drivers, they say that it helps them drive better. I mean, this is just anecdotal thing, right? Like, and they also say that it keeps them awake and more aware. So I was wondering what the sound, how does the sound thing interact?
So it's a great question. And so there are, I think, 3 different types of sounds that you yourself referred to. Okay, one kind of a sound is the directions and such. Those probably are things where mentally you're also in that zone to say that I am actually looking for that direction. So I'm tuned to handle that. In my mind, it will not be as big a distraction. And your eyes and hands are anyway in the right place, right? They're not actually getting distracted. The other kind of sound, which is the music, the music at a certain level does actually help, particularly the people who are on the road for a long time. But if it starts drowning the other cues, right? Because there's so many cues happening, right? There's a honking, or maybe there's actually just the recognition that you're hitting gravel. You may get feedback from the wheel itself, but you will actually also hear that there's something happening. So it's important to make sure that the noise does not drown out the other sources of feedback. But if they are reaching that level of fatigue, then actually there's a different problem. The third sound, which you did not refer to, so it's no different from a hands-free, right? Because there you are involved in an active conversation, right? And you don't know how exactly that is going to go. Because, for example, it may be that you're talking to your spouse and you're planning something. And so you're intensely involved in that kind of a discussion, or it's a problem at work, and that becomes even more critical in some ways to say that, how is it to be addressed or whatever. Or there may be another situation where you are supporting somebody, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member or whatever. So there is a lot of unloading that is happening on you, right? Those kind of things become very, very distracting. It's much more distracting than a person sitting next to you and talking, because the person sitting next to you and talking actually has an understanding of what's happening around you. And he or she will actually shut up if he recognizes that there is something else that is happening on the road, or even tell you to shut up. But person outside will not actually have that context. So voice by itself may not necessarily distract, but our sound, but there are sort of grades in there. Yeah.
You read my mind. I was going to make exactly the same 2 points, which is, I think it's the engagement and the interaction that is the bigger deal. And if the person you're engaging with is in the same vehicle, it's perhaps less unsafe because of exactly what you said. So maybe let me follow up. Have you tried this exercise with, with a distraction like that? Someone listening to music and doing this exercise, and someone on a phone call and doing this exercise.
We haven't done that, but we can certainly look at upgrading this. But incidentally, okay, I don't have that picture, I think, in my, do I? Yeah, I do. So the simulation that is this particular exercise, what scientists have done is that in the simulators, they let people drive, and then they simulate these. So initially, it's just plain driving, right? And they map whatever the areas on the brain that are active, so the people are reacting to the simulated road conditions, cars, whatever else that is happening. Then they have these triggers. So they may call, they may send a text, or they may ask the person who is driving to do the same. They may have some conversation with the person so that it actually starts triggering some other centers in the brain. And you can see over here, right, that if there is no distraction, there is this area which is actually engaged. If you're driving with just listening to sentences, then you can see that some part of that brain is now not engaged in driving, right? And that actually is what is happening. It's similar to what you said. This is, of course, taken through the senses. It's not an exercise like this, but it may be interesting to actually do something similar. So there is some things that, apart from just the defensive driving aspects, I just want you to take away a few other things that you can do. One is that there are some very, very good guys like the Pothole Raja. Some of you may haven't heard of him or even interacted with him. But Portal Roger has a very interesting concept, and if Microsoft actually is interested, they can actually certainly reach out to him. So he helps in terms of adopting roads and maintaining them as part of CSR, right? He would actually make it really beautiful and be able to make the asphalt and all that really very nice. So if there are certain areas that you feel, when your road here is one of the better roads anyway in Bangalore, but if there are some roads that you want to pick up and say, we as a company want to actually adopt this road, then this would be actually very, very good CSR. The other thing that I want to call out is this thing about being a good Samaritan. I'm not sure whether people are aware of this, but basically this was a law, okay, that was passed in the central government. The states adopted one by one. Right now it is adopted by Maharashtra and Karnataka. Others haven't yet adopted it fully. But basically it allows you to help a person who has met with an accident without having to worry about what the doctors will say, what the police will say, whatever else. If you have a fear of will I get involved, will I get sucked in, will I get persecuted, or whatever, that will not happen. So don't hesitate from helping, right? If you see an accident, the first thing you can do is to actually call for help, call an ambulance or call the traffic police. And then, of course, if you can, provide help. Don't try to administer first aid if you don't know how, okay? Particularly if there is an injury and you can aggravate it. But otherwise, do call for help. So being a good Samaritan is actually protecting anybody who helps a victim. And the most important is to take care of yourselves, your friends, and family. Should we? Can you give her the mic? Yeah.
So a lot of people ask us this, okay? I'm a doctor with a 35 years experience in my field, in pathology, in quality systems. And Sanjay is a graduate of IIT Bombay. He's done his MS from NC State, US. And then he's worked in various capacities with a lot of multinationals and a lot of companies. So as I said, we are not here in our professional capacities. We are here as parents. We are here as unfortunate parents who have lost our daughter in a road traffic accident 8 years back. Our daughter was all of 23 years. She finished her MBBS, finished her internship, graduated with top honors, with 11 of the 14 gold medals in MBBS. She graduated as the best outgoing student, as the best graduate in, I don't know how many years, 25 years. And then she joined CMC Vellore. On the 9th of September, she was traveling from her hostel to the hospital, because the hospital has no place to keep the residents. And they were all kept in a community, which was about, I think, 15 or 12 kilometers away from the hospital. And life for a doctor is very difficult. You hardly get time to eat, time to sleep. And that morning she was going to the hospital. One of her colleagues offered to drive her. It was a two-wheeler, and both of them were wearing helmets. Perhaps she was the only person, a pillion rider, in the whole of Vellore. Why Vellore? Maybe the whole of Tamil Nadu, who always wore a helmet despite being a pillion rider. It's almost 8 years and we do not have a closure. We don't know how the accident took place. She came under the wheels of a truck. Her friend escaped with a few scratches. His family is lucky, may he be blessed. And my daughter passed away. And Sanjay wasn't here when this happened. He was in US and I was alone with my son who was then in school and 14 years old. And I had to rush there and take care of everything. My daughter did nothing wrong, okay? But as somebody asked, I have no closure on the accident. Was it the fault of the scooter driver? Was it the fault of... So that is one part of the systems in India, that we do not know what happens. We just do not know. Because there is no clarity. It is such a bad form of investigation that we have. So you're left with a whole lot of pain and no answers. Believe me, it changes a family, completely changes a family. You are not what you ever were. It's not just the mother, not just the father, but a sibling, elderly grandparents, friends. So this is a request from a mother to all the young people to please, please, please drive safely, and nobody here can take care of yourselves, your family, your loved one other than you. Whatever the shit conditions of the road in this country, whatever way other people drive in this country, nobody cares whether you lose your life other than your people. Okay, and we haven't gone to the court, we haven't pursued it. It's such a painful process that you rather leave it alone. So I reserve this last painful slide just because I don't want to drown the whole thing at the beginning of the lecture. But know that there are a lot of people like us in India, lots of them. Many of unfortunate people actually go about doing work on the road, filling those potholes. So if rich companies have a way of doing something, please don't wait for BBMP, BSP, BWSSB, whatever it is. You have the resources, you have people. You can actually do something constructive on the roads. Because, blaming is not going to get anybody anywhere. So just to let you know, take care of yourself, do what is possible. You know that 67% of all accidents are related to driver behavior. Accept the fact that we have dirty roads, accept the fact that everybody else thinks he or she can drive better than you, and most probably they don't. But then you are in control of your vehicle, you are in control of your driving skills, and you are in control of your life. You are responsible for your life and the well-being of your family. That's all I have to say. Take care and stay safe. Thank you for this opportunity.
We bring this slide, not to bring melodrama into the picture, but I think it's more important to recognize where we started when we showed that picture from Victoria, right? And we said 0. And this actually sort of is also to bring it home, because whatever the statistics, it doesn't matter, it has to be 0. So we have a small pledge, okay? And I have this actually on a printout, and I would request that the people here, I can share it with you on soft copy also if you want to share it with the broader team. But I would like you to sign it only if you are really able to follow it, right? Meaning nobody's going to police you. Nobody's going to actually pressure you into signing it. It's not for me. It's not for somebody else. If you genuinely believe it, please sign the pledge. And it will actually be one way in which we actually recognize that we convey something. There are different things that we do. I mean, we certainly consider this as one of our important aspects of our initiative to build awareness and to sort of improve driving behavior. We work with little kids, whether it is grade 3 or 4, to understand what are the kind of hazards on the road, how do you actually react to those hazards. Also trying to influence them so that they can actually become better citizens when they inculcate that habit. We run a safety quest, which is for school children again. And that is like a quiz program with all elements of safety that come into that. And off late, we started working a little bit with technology also. But given the background that I have, for a while, I didn't really pick that up. Work itself, being with a startup, was very demanding. But this year, I started actually spending a little more time in trying to figure out what are the various technology solutions that can come to the fore over here. And certainly would like to hear from you folks on how HAMS and beyond, some ideas that you have. Currently working with IIIT Hyderabad on a project to map road anomalies, seeing some good results in terms of the algorithms working, but finding it very, very challenging in terms of moving from there to an operational model where that is actually being able to be used effectively. So there are quite a few things to go along the way. But those are some things. Along with a couple of like-minded people, both of them are in Hyderabad. One of them runs the driving school, but together they have actually brought out the driver's manual based on the more recent Motor Vehicles Act. And that's also available online. So I've been one of the guys who's been very heavily involved in helping them shape up that training material. And also working with other foundations like the Save Life, which has been also able to push the laws like the Good Samaritan law and others. So trying to influence policy and trying to get some things done in that way. So those are some of the other things that we are doing. But most important in my mind has always been that if we can influence the mindset, then whether it is the normal behavior or whether it sparks something else in terms of doing something more, I think that's actually going to be very, very key. We can certainly do it. I mean, I'm not as, I feel whatever is around us, we can certainly improve and we can change. And certainly trying to do something towards that, whether it is through education, awareness, or through technology. So Venkat, thank you so much again for hosting us and giving us this opportunity to interact with your teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay and Shubhangi, for your presentation on a really important topic, and also for, as I mentioned in email, really turning your personal pain and tragedy into positive force. I think these are very important things, and I think a lot of what you said resonated with me. So I think we'll have a discussion now, Baba. So people who signed up as well as others interested, please come over to Baba. And people online, let me know, and I can send you the Teams link. And let's have a discussion on what concrete things could be done at the intersection of technology and other such ideas and safety.
Yep. Thank you so much.